Welcome to the Michigan Chronicle. This is a special roundtable series where we ask the question, does Detroit have the right leadership? I'm digital anchor Andre Ash, and does Detroit have the right leadership is the question, but I think we've got the right panel to talk about that and have that conversation. Joining us right now is Tucson Knight. He is the Dean of Students at DPSCD, also founder and president of Caught Up. We'll also talk tonight to Nicole Small. She's the vice chair of the Detroit Charter Commission. And we also have joining us this evening is Tafari Brent, men's minister at Fellowship Chapel, and Eric Thomas, the city's chief storyteller with the city of Detroit. So let's have at it. I think there's a couple of different scenarios we can take this conversation as far as current leadership right now in Detroit, what that looks like politically from mayor, city council, police chief, also community leadership and religious leadership. Where are they right now? What are the current state of affairs when we talk about leadership overall for the city of Detroit? Let's start with Nicole. Nicole, what is the current state of affairs in your opinion of what Detroit leadership looks like right now?
Um, it's definitely not unified as it should be. We have a lot of people who are operating from a lens of being paralyzed with fear, which is a huge issue. We have certain people who have either deemed themselves leaders or who are also influencers over another group of people in the community, but they fail to step up to the plate to address these issues that are compromising the best interests of the people, who are compromising the welfare of the citizens of Detroit. And yet and still, they're the ones who are most often at the table doing a lot of nothing.
Say doing a lot of nothing. What does that mean? Like from politically, are you talking political, community?
Self-serving, self-serving,
So
self-serving, political and community activists. I'm getting feedback.
okay.
As well as the community activists.
Well, let's go to Tucson right now. Do you feel the same way as far as the current state of affairs when it comes to leadership right now in Detroit? Is, let's say, for example, the current leadership with Mayor Duggan, has he moved the needle, moved the ball when it comes to moving Detroit in the right direction or not?
Well, let me say I didn't understand exactly what you were saying. I was hoping to get some more specifics, but I have to be honest.
You worked in Mayor Duggan's administration.
Yeah, I was going to say
So
that.
the question that I'm asking is, do you agree that Mayor Duggan is moving the ball forward?
Yeah, I was going to finish that. I was saying I didn't understand what she had said. As relates for me, I was definitely about to say that. So I worked for the mayor's office, so I would be biased on this conversation on this topic seriously. But I would say yes. I believe that when I was in the mayor's office, we definitely moved the needle forward. You know, you saw more demolitions. One of the things I pride myself on, it didn't happen when I was there, but I pushed the mayor to put speed bumps down in the neighborhoods because a lot of people were frustrated with how many people are speeding. And if you start, I was just announced for city council yesterday. At my announcement event, people were coming up to me like, we need more speed bumps. So I believe that, of course, you can talk to different people around the neighborhoods, around the city, and you will get different opinions. But overall, has the city improved under the mayor's leadership? Yes, you have to say that. And I believe you'll find a lot of people that will agree with that. And I think you'll see that in its reelection numbers as well. Now, are there things that can be done to make this city a better place? Absolutely. There's still
let me interject just a moment to that point right there. You say that the city is moving in the right direction under Mayor Duggan. Tafari Brent, you've done great work. People will look to you as a leader, and also within your church as well. But would you agree with Tucson that Detroit is moving in the right direction under Mayor Duggan?
Well, I think we just have to deal with the objective reality, right? So I don't get into a bunch of what I think and how I feel. Let's look at the outcomes. And the outcomes can definitely drive how we feel, because some of these things we get very personal about because we care about people. Especially when you look at, the folks who are on this panel. I know Nicole and I do a lot of work together in the community, especially with the marginalized and those without a voice who are oftentimes unseen. I'm saying, so when you consider that dynamic, I mean, the question that we have to really entertain is what kind of leadership? I'm challenged by the notion that elected officials are automatically leaders, right? I'm challenged by that notion. Just because you are an elected elected official, I think you're more so a servant than a leader. Now, there are certain positions where, yeah, obviously you're organizational leader, so therefore that makes you a leader. If you're a mayor, if you're a county sheriff, or an executive leadership position like that, that's leadership. But I think state reps and city council members, I don't know if I would consider them necessarily leaders per se, but they definitely have some impact on the outcomes that directly impact leadership. When you look at where we are as a city, right? I mean, it's undeniable. I mean, let's look at the data. Here we come off of bankruptcy, and we are now the second poorest city in the country. We're still wrestling with $600,000 in overtaxation. To this very day, we still have roughly 30% of individuals, especially on the lower end of the spectrum, still being undertaxed, right? When you look at crime in our city, it's still an issue, right? I mean, so there are a cornucopia of issues that are still present that existed before the current leadership, that this leadership has to be held accountable for. When you look at Black equity in the city, I mean, we still don't have Black businesses that are at the table, that are getting opportunities with procurement and getting opportunities with getting contracts with the city to take care of their families and to reinvest resources back into the community. I'm saying, so when you look at all of those variables, right, not to mention some of the things that we have done intimately with the administration, and just some of the mistakes that may have been made and some of the decisions that may have been made that shouldn't have been made. Right.
All right, we'll come back to that. Let's come back to that and talk about holding leaders accountable, and also how do we groom new generation of leadership, as well as how do we find solutions to what Detroit looks like in terms of leadership moving forward. But let me get to Eric Thomas for a moment, because you're in an interesting position. You're the city's chief storyteller. I know you tell me politics isn't your thing, but certainly you were a truth teller and total like it is before the current leadership hired you in this position. You have an interesting role of telling stories and promoting city resources that are available. Where do you see yourself in this conversation of what Detroit looks like when it comes to current leadership and also moving forward? What does that picture look like for you?
I definitely have a weird role, because I'm known as a person who tells the truth. And I even sit in the role that I'm in a very uncensored place, which I think it's whenever anybody knows that I'm going to go in an interview, they're always like, Eric's going to say what he wants to say. So is that the most dangerous thing we could possibly do? But I think it speaks to, I think it does speak to leadership, that they would allow somebody like me, who's going to just say whatever he feels, to occupy a role like chief storyteller of the city. And I've been in this role for about a year and a month or so, year and 2 months. And I've been able to just absorb and understand what's going on. What are the deficiencies? What's not working? Why are things not working? Why are things working? Learning about things that are doing much better, right? I think Tafari brings up some of the poverty rate, right? It's 30%. But 5 years ago, it was at 40%, right? And so when you see us move above some of these other surrounding areas and these other places, that if we're talking about trajectory, that's a positive trajectory, right? If you talk about procurement and contracting, there was definitely a hole, right? I owned a business in Detroit for 10 years, right? I had an office downtown. I've employed almost predominantly Detroiters. And so I understand that feeling like I'm not getting any help here, which is why when I joined the administration, it was important for me to find out what is actually being done. So when you see something like Detroit Means Business come out that's focused predominantly on small businesses, that was something I didn't have, right? Which means that's a forward growth. When you see,
but you're in the administration,
yeah,
you can be a point person and trying to connect the dots of providing resources for Detroiters and also telling that story.
That's my primary job.
That's your primary job.
To make sure people know these things exist.
But Nicole, let me ask you, do you feel like connecting those dots when it comes to resources, is current leadership doing that effectively?
No, and I haven't seen these stories that he's talking about since he speaks his mind and the issues that are going on. We haven't seen a story about the reality of water shutoffs, the poor water infrastructure that we have. We haven't seen a reality of people being displaced out of their homes, people being displaced out of their businesses. The reality is we haven't heard their story about how Black contractors are being excluded out of the process. And when they're caught, when the administration is caught and they're exposed for doing this, then you know what they do? Then they consolidate contractors to say, oh yeah, we have good Detroit-based business. The problem that I have with this conversation is that for anyone to sit on this platform and to claim to be conscious and to claim to understand what a leader is, and you want to say that the mayor is doing a great job and he's doing some things well, well, I don't think that you're doing a great job when you're gentrifying the majority of people who have been here to hold this city down even after the harsh economic downturn. But to provide these amenities and these subsidies to people who, you know, just a couple of years ago, you couldn't even get them to spit across 8 Mile into the city of Detroit because they wanted to have no parts of it. The people who are benefiting from this so-called resurgence of the city of Detroit are not Detroiters and people in the neighborhood. You know why? Because we have a leader in place that does not put Detroiters first. And those are the facts.
Nicole, let me get to that. And Tucson, I want to come to you in just a moment as well, because you have an interesting perspective having worked in Mayor Douglas' administration. But to that point, Eric, Nicole states, do you see yourself as a defender of the Duggan administration or as a representative that puts out the stories in a positive light for the administration, or the truth, or bring the truth teller like you've always been before this position?
I think my position is different than that, because I don't find, like, I don't think I need to defend Mayor Duggan. I think Mayor Duggan does a good job of defending Mayor Duggan. My job is to make sure that we elevate the stories of the residents that are going on, right? There's a lot of news going on, a lot of people talking about, you know, crime in Detroiters and how bad everything is. Every time there's a joke on this on a comedy somewhere, it's at the expense of Detroit or the Lions or whatever. My job is to make sure that people know that there are people who are in the city of Detroit who are active and are advocates and are fighting and are working and are building. And so if you go to the, you know, the neighborhoods.org, right, there's hundreds of stories on there, because that was the previous chief storyteller, Aaron Foley, who established that. If you go to Stories from Detroit on Instagram, you'll see stories coming out almost every other day about residents and stuff that they're doing. And that's what my job is right now. I'm not kind of getting into like a slinging match about what could be better. Things can always be better. Of course, things can be better. We are in a city that, once again, I think it's almost giving one person too much energy about, like, is that the cause of systemic racism, right? Detroit has been impacted by systemic racism for 40, 50 years. And so what we're seeing is,
but it takes a leader to be able to move the ball forward and progressing the city on multiple issues like water shutoffs. Tucson, you've had an interesting position being with or working in the Duggan administration to try to connect the dots and solving problems for the city, for Detroiters rather. Do you see a disconnect between the leadership, current leadership, and its residents right now?
Well, as I stated before, it's all in who you talk to. When I was out in the neighborhoods on a consistent basis, and I've never left the neighborhoods, to be frank about it, you know, you always have people that do not believe enough is being done. And I think you're always going to have those individuals. I think that there are some of the points that were made, you know, some of them are valid. Like, how do we get more people Black people getting contracts? How do we make sure that we're not being priced out of our own city? Of course, those are valid issues, and we need to address that. But at the same time, to sit here and say nothing's been done right, everything's done wrong, I think that's kind of ridiculous. That's the first thing. And I think that majority of Detroiters would disagree with you on that one. And also, I don't like the idea of beating up on a city like, oh, Detroit's the poor. Detroit is, I don't know where my brother got the facts from, but Detroit is not the second poorest city. I just looked that up because I just double checked for myself. But I noticed, like, a lot of times people want to throw out these different numbers and these facts to make it seem like, you know, oh, we're down and out. Detroiters are fighters. Detroiters believe in, like, you know, that, like, we come back, we are resilient. And I'm not going to sit here and just allow people to say, like, oh, Detroit's down and out. We're still, like, there are things that can be improved. And of course, there are things that are being done right. And that's how I'll leave it there.
So far, what are the things that are being done right you see in the city of Detroit when it comes to the current leadership that's in place now? Are there anything that's being done right?
Yeah, well, I can give you some specifics. As I stated earlier, you have
hey, hold on.
Oh, you said
relax, Doc. Relax. One, the data, survey data for 2019 is clear, right? The number 2 most impoverished big city in the U.S., right? We're at 30.6. So don't talk over me, Tucson. Just relax, brother. That's not the way we have an intelligent conversation. So the data that I've looked at clearly reflects the fact that we are still a city with a seriously impacted, impoverished community, most of which are African American people. Still look at the fact that 40% of individuals in the city of Detroit don't have dependable transportation. Still have to look at the fact that we don't have regional transportation, which has been an issue for years. And I haven't seen anything initiated beyond the horrifically failed Q line, right, that speaks towards those issues. These are hardcore poverty issues. You still have a city where you have store owners cashing checks and making over $25 million in revenues per week. You still have cities, you still have businesses in the city of Detroit. I know of 10 at least, right? A lot of it has been public information that don't have business licenses and haven't had business licenses for 3, 4, 5 years. How do we allow that to happen? And these same businesses are impacting our community by way of beating people down, as far like Andrea Warren on Puritan and Coyle, and also folks getting shot and killed at gas stations. All these gas stations, they had expired business licenses. They also had some serious safety violations. These are serious issues that reflect leadership in the city. It also speaks to our culture. And it's not like folks in leadership don't know. They know about these issues. They've just been slow about addressing them in regards to procurement.
But Tafari, to that point, when you talk about crime, Tafari, is that both a leadership issue, or is it, I mean, a community leadership issue as well? Because it's going to take both sides to be able to bring down an issue like crime that is that's an ongoing issue every single day in this city.
Yeah, that's why we're out there. So obviously, I subscribe to that notion, right? That's my work. That's what I've been doing for 30 years. So I believe in, community patrols, community policing, effective, proactive engagement of the community. I believe in addressing core issues that lead to incarceration and criminality. So yeah, I believe it is all of us.
Sure, but the current leadership, the mayor and the police chief, they would say that they're doing those proactive things in the community right now. Nicole, what says you?
Not. We have an administration who wants to invest in facial recognition technology that has over a 75% error rate of identifying African Americans, especially African American women. How does that increase safety in our neighborhoods? We have a city which has decided to put police officers under fully functioning traffic lights Monday through Friday to direct traffic instead of dispatching them into the neighborhoods where we have a slow response time. We have an administration that fails to see the outrage in the neighborhoods and in the citizens of Detroit because they are tired of being abused by the system. And so instead of using dollars to improve and increase safety in communities, they want to go and countersue protesters. Never heard of that a day in my life. So if you want to talk about crime and whose responsibility is, well, first and foremost, absolutely, it should be the mayor who determines who the chief of police will be. And then those two need to first work together and stop abusing the resources in one of the largest budgets for the city, which is the police department, and actually make those dollars go to better use to make sure that we increase safety in the city of Detroit, in our neighborhoods. Facial recognition will not do it. $30 million is just absurd.
But
Eric, when we talk about,
may I respond to that question? And I'll be very quick. You asked me, have they done some good? I mean, of course, right? There's been some good done, right? I think as far as DPD is concerned, on 2010, 2012, we wrote and pushed to get past the ban the box ordinance. As a result of that, there's a towing company that hires 100% formerly incarcerated people. That's a win, right? There have been several racist officers that have been held accountable by DPD. We need more to be held accountable, but there has been some movement in that area. Operation Clean Sweep in regards to the narcotics division, right? What they've done in regards to holding crooked narcotics officers responsible. That's been a win. So to sit back and say they have done nothing would say that we have not been effective as community leaders, because we have been effective as community leaders because we've been holding them accountable and pushing them to do their jobs. So no, to sit back and say that they haven't done anything that's good, it's preposterous. I mean, I don't even have those kinds of discussions, right?
Now you're making sense.
I want to get to Eric for a second, and Tucson, I'm coming to you. But Nicole, how do you respond to that about the current leadership, the narrative that they're not doing anything?
What I said was, you asked me about the leadership in the city of Detroit. And what I'm telling you is that the majority of the people who sit at the table and who make these decisions aren't doing anything. I mean, anything beneficial for the citizens of Detroit. And here lies the problem. Like, I'm not here to advocate on what the mayor has done well until he starts doing better by our people. I don't know how people can sit here and say, oh, he's doing a great job, when you have people who have been overtaxed more than $600 million. He was a part of that problem. When you have residents who still can't afford water, and it has to be an election year for him to find it within his wheelhouse to be able to put a moratorium on that water. You know, it's always something that has to come at an election year. And so now he's going to partner with Dan Gilbert. I mean, I think that's great. $15 million to help people with their property taxes. But let's be clear. We've still been overtaxed more than $600 million. And you know who's been impacted by that? Long-standing Detroiters. And where's the refuge? Where's the grievance procedure for them? That's the problem with this leadership. It's absolutely a huge disconnect, because you know what? You have people who are in charge of writing stories who won't write the truth. That is a problem in our city. You won't address the real problem. You want to talk about how conscious you are, but you support a leader who does the same thing as supporting the officers who killed George Floyd. That's what he did with Malice Green. So don't come to me about how great he is, because I'm going to keep it all the way 100 with the facts.
Son, you had a response to that. And I also want to point out what's interesting is that you announced this week that you'll be running for city council. How do you think you'll be able to move the ball forward if you're elected to that position on city council, and what your leadership will look like on addressing some of the issues that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think just understanding what the neighborhood goes through on a consistent basis. And I've been out there. I started a mentor program helping out with youth. I started a program called starting a program called the Brotherhood, where the police mentor youth in some of the worst areas of the city dealing with violence. And I believe just continuing having those conversations and knowing what goes on in our neighborhoods and what people are looking for. And if you talk to the neighbors, they want simple things. They want the police to show up on time. They want the quality of life issues taken serious. That means they don't want neighbors that keep them up all night, or neighbors trash blowing all across their yard. They just want simple things. And of course, we have to address all the needs of our citizens. And I believe that, there's a lot of work that can be done with getting more Blacks contracts. There's a lot of work that can be done to make sure that they're staying in their homes. And I look forward to working towards that. That's what I believe, and that's what I'm going to do.
Let me get to Eric, because I know that you would take a different, perhaps take offense to that, to the storytelling or issues that you're putting out when it comes to what is the city doing right now and the work that you're doing. So what is the work that you're doing to promote the city of Detroit in a positive look and moving the city forward?
So I think there's levels. So I want to address a few things, because I'd be chilling. I like to let people express, right? I think the frustration that everybody has is warranted. I mean, if you've lived in the city for 40 years or 30 years and, the new administration's only been around for a few of those years, then you still have a lot of frustration. And if you're working in the community, like Tafari, like Nicole, like Tucson, like myself, or like we're outside, I've lived here, I've worked here, my grandma was a member of Call Them Out, right? I get it, right? So when you're experiencing that on the consistent, I can see that level of frustration. But I want to echo something that I think Tucson said, which is that the narrative of Detroit is not just Detroit is impoverished and everyone is sad. And I think that is one thing I think that is important to communicate. I know it's easy to fall into that rabbit hole, especially when you're dealing with that, right? I grew up really low income. I grew up, my grandma had $600 a month or something like that, right? Like, I get it.
It's an important
narrative
that some
part
have.
of the narrative, and it's people's real life, right? This isn't like a story. This is reality for a lot of people. Water shutoffs was a real thing, right? The moratorium under COVID was fantastic, right? That was something that was done at the state level because we as a city can't afford to do that, right? Their money has to come from somewhere, right? And that was before, that was election. This is the election year. That was done last year. That was during a pandemic and a crisis that was, thankfully extended. They partnered with people like Abdul Sayed and people who have been very critical. The question is, yes, there are challenges. How do we solve the problems? I think you see somebody like Tafari, who's out here in these streets every day, partnering and talking to Tucson, working with the police department, working with how do we pass things. But I think it is important to be realistic about timelines, what actually happened, right? You could talk about the overassessments, for instance. If you want to bring that up, you got to understand that the overassessment started around 2009, 2010, right? Mayor Duggan wasn't in office until 2014. Mayor Duggan ran on the overassessments as a problem, right? It wasn't something that was unknown to him, right? And so when he ran a month in, right, he slashed that by 20%, right? And for that next year, he continued to fight for that. And so we worked on fixing it because people weren't just over-assessed maliciously, right? There were incredible failings in the structures and systems and departments that were supposed to take care of those services. So staffing those services, solving those problems, getting those things done, that was something that had to be done. But that money was spent, right? Like it went into schools, it went into roads, it went into lights, right?
And I see your point on it, that it was an issue that happened before Duggan, and some will question or praise or criticize his work towards addressing this issue. I don't want to get caught up in the weeds on it, but it is still a leadership question, Nicole, on overassessments. And just in general, could you see yourself at all working with this current leadership or administration, or is it time that we talk about what is the new grooming of a new leadership looks like for the city of Detroit?
Actually, I think it should be both. I think that they can coexist. I will say this, that's not factual, your understanding about the overtaxation. Yes, it did happen prior to this administration coming in, but to say that all of the homes, they were slashed, the taxes were slashed by 20%, brother, that's just absolutely not true. We still are being overtaxed today. We're still being overtaxed today, okay, and it has continued. But to have someone to run on that issue and then not to really come into office to correct that issue is a problem, right? That's not really a solution. That's you talking the talk and not walking the walk. I personally have presented city council with a resolution for the problem. I submitted a resolution last year, and it just simply says, listen, everybody who has been overtaxed, go ahead and give them a certain percentage of the credit every year. You know what? Then that way we won't bankrupt the city. Somebody like me on one of my houses, I was overtaxed over $8,000. I don't expect the city to cut me a check for that. I do understand that there's a process to go through the Michigan tribunal process. But what I'm saying is offer the people some relief, right? That's a solution. Give us 20-something% of our credit every year until that credit is exhausted. That way people still pay their taxes every year and they feel as if they're important and they're getting some relief. As far as working with...
When you said, okay, you're getting ready to work, you're about to go into working with the mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as working with the administration, you have to have a administration that is more amenable to actual change, someone who will at least acknowledge their flaws. We have a mayor that's unyielding. Now, this is the fact. You know, I didn't do it, was his response about the tax break. That happened before me, and I stopped it when I came in here in 2014. It's not true. So if you're not going to deal with how you're a part of the problem, are we really going to get to the point of having a solution? Now, these are just my experiences. The only time we've ever seen any movement out of the mayor is either an election year or when we have applied severe pressure consistently to get him to move on certain issues. I just personally don't think that when it comes to the quality of life for Detroiters, that should always have to be the approach. If somebody submits something to you,
some people would agree with you, some people would disagree, but I think the essential keys to leadership would be communication, creativity, being able to motivate people, to being able to delegate and get positive feedback. Before we get to you, Eric, I just want to go to Tucson real quick. What would you add to the larger conversation of where we need to move forward as a city when it comes to grooming new leadership? What does that look like, and being able to know what the issues are and bring people together into solving those issues? Because certainly, I think if you poll most people in Detroit, everything isn't so bad, but certainly it takes whether newfound leadership to be able to continue to move the ball forward, if at all. What says you about how we groom that new generation of leadership in Detroit?
And that's what I'm like excited about, man, because I tell you, I work with young people who are part of Detroit on a daily basis, and sometimes, you know, as people say, they don't know where they fit in, or they have been given these different type of ways of living, and it's like, nah, you can't live like that, man. You can contribute to this city. I see a lot of them. I think a part of it is like education. How can they be a part of this city? How can they be a part of the decisions? And I think we need to be consistent. We need to be to make sure that we are making them a part of all the conversations that are like this, that are happening. Like, what do you want to see in your neighborhood? What do you want to see improve? And I think you'll start seeing a better group of leaders come about in our city. And I think that's so important as we move forward.
What do you see as far as the next steps of leadership in the city? What does it look like? And the role that you have played and continue to play and to bringing light on making a difference in this city?
Who you speaking to, brother? Who you speaking to, brother?
Yeah, Tafari. Yeah, Tafari. What is
I didn't hear you at all. I didn't hear you at all.
your role in the community, and where do you see Detroit moving forward as far as grooming that next generation of leadership? What does it look like to you, and how do you play a role in it?
I think there's a solution in place, and I think Sister Nicole jumped on this early, to be honest with you, with her rollout of the CAC, which is already in the charter, but she really highlighted it and organized brothers and sisters throughout the city, and really pushed us and provided us with information, resources, and direction as to how we could build a stronger direct democracy model. I mean, representative democracy is good, but I'm real big on direct democracy models. CAC is, of course, will be staffed or will be occupied by 8 brothers and sisters from the community, and the city council and the mayor, will be directly held accountable by them, or they have to at least meet with them 4 times a year to engage engage them around some of those issues that they're having at the grassroots level. So we don't have to come up with anything new. I think there's already a model in place, and we need to support sisters and support all the beautiful brothers and sisters that were organized around the city to really push the CAC, because we only had 2 districts that actually had it. We're in the process of getting the rest of them on board, and I think we're heading in the right direction. I think when you can get executive leadership and elected officials closer to the actual people on the ground, that is when you're on your way to having effective leadership, because effective leadership, brother, is establishing the capacity to transform vision into action. And that can only be done if you hear all of the voices that are directly impacted by that vision, right? So I think we have a model in place, and I encourage the community and all the listeners to support the CAC work that's being initiated by Sister Nicole, and let's make sure we get these folks put on that council and get them active.
I want to hit on a couple of points. Eric, finally, how do we tell that story about Detroit moving the ball forward? You're part of the current leadership where we are now, and it's your role and responsibility to shape a narrative.
I mean, I think what's really important to remember is, and it's been touched on a few times, right? The leadership in the city is not just centered in the political leadership. It's in the overall connection of how people are touching and communicating, right? And I think it's important that you know that, like, what is the truth, right? And where to find the actual information, and how to find help, right? If you know that there was something going on, if you know that you have challenges with back taxes, then there are programs like HBTAP, right? You can do that stuff, and then you can get, I think 11,000 people are in the HBTAP program. Most of those people got full exemptions. Then you see something like this thing that rolls out on top of it. That progressive march is important. I think what I should be held accountable for, and I always say this, if it's going to be on me, is to making sure people know those things exist, right? I spent a year figuring out how to do it. I restructured the city website. If you go on the city website now, it's organized around opportunities. If you go to traymi.gov/opportunities, you'll see stuff for families. You'll see stuff for businesses. You'll see stuff for access. And you can click on it agnostic of department. Things aren't buried, right, anymore, right? And that was what I've been working on. How do I make sure that when I start telling stories and start trying to help people, that they actually get access to it? You got a program that we launched, Community Health Corps, right, which is working individual people's challenges to say every person's challenge is different, right? They've helped 600 people. They're helping another 100. My goal is to say I need to be held accountable to make sure that when we do stuff, people can get access to that stuff. And when Nicole is out in the streets and Tafari's out in the street, Tu's out on the street, they have something they can immediately go to help solve that problem. That is my role. I find myself as not only a storyteller, but a person that is working to provide resources in a way that it feels accessible, so people don't feel separated from those opportunities.
Final point, Nicole, the story of Detroit and leadership. Where do we go from here? Your perspective.
So write this down, Eric, because it's probably going to be the last time I say it. I agree with you when you say that the work that you have done
at the end of the world
on the city website.
Wait. Was there a disagreement?
Listen. Write this down, Eric. Like, I do agree with you about accessing the city's website. Where I struggle, again, and this kind of plays into your question, Andre, is that we have such a great digital divide in this city. And that's another issue that's really not being addressed at the table, when there has been contract after contract after contract that has come to the table. Like, how do we invest 30 million again into facial recognition as opposed to investing it into the digital divide? So you know what that lets me know? There's also a disconnect with there's a generational gap, right? So you have young people, they live and breathe off of technology, really and truly, like that's their lifeline. Why aren't we making other opportunities more accessible, especially for them to get into leadership? Listen, looking at Tucson, looking at Eric, to say that they've worked in the city's administration, that's real. They're not the norm. Okay, they're not the norm, but we have to figure out. No, what I mean by that is you're not the average age demographic of an appointee, you know what I mean, in the city's administration. And so that's problematic. How do we get them involved? And the way that we get them involved is, yes, I believe introducing them to the CACs, the Community Advisory Council, where you would have direct access to negotiations and engagement with your city council and with your mayor, whoever that may be, to be able to convey that information back to your community, come up with some solutions. It's a great way to train people. Also, let's just be honest. At some point, we have to stop just using young people on campaigns and in organizations to be social media experts and just to be the legs, you know, to do all of the walking to get the information out. They have a lot more to offer. And I think that if we don't invest into our own, then we lead them to be preyed upon by other groups of people. And then we want to get upset when they turn and they go in that direction. But it really should come from us first and foremost. So for me, I believe that, you know, with anyone who's going to be elected, you have a duty and a responsibility, or if you're just in a leadership role in a community, to make sure that you mentor someone else, but bring them in a more meaningful way.
Can I just, this is like a 30-second thing. I just want to say
20 seconds.
20 seconds. So we do have a director of digital inclusion named Josh Edmonds, who has several tens of $1 million investment in digital, in bridging the digital divide. I think that's really important. It's something that we've been at the forefront of. And he's younger than me. But I do want to, like, at some point, we do need to get together, because you're one of the few people I haven't just sat down with. And I think it's really important that we bridge that.
And maybe we could talk, you could share more about it on the website where you tell your story.
Right, go to theneighborhoods.org.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it at that. An important conversation. I know there was an exchange of different opinions and perspectives, but, you know, I think it was a conversation worth having. And the right people to have it with. This conversation does not end here. It will be ongoing. We'll talk about the leadership of Detroit. Wanted to make sure that the session was informative as well. Appreciate our guests on Tucson Night, Dean of Students for DPSCD, and also the founder of Caught Up, founder and president. We also have Nicole Small, vice chair of the Detroit Charter Commission, Tafari Brent, men's minister at Fellowship Chapel, and Eric Thomas, chief storyteller for the city of Detroit. I appreciate you all for being here. Thanks so much. And thanks so much for watching Michigan Chronicle.